Can you handle the truth? Hi, Wayne Ammons here. That was my rather poor impersonation of Jack Nicholson in the movie A Few Good Men. But in nearly all my videos, I try to help listeners discover truth by comparing the Bible with historical facts. Now, you may or may not believe in the Bible. That's a personal choice. Some do, some don't. But to deny historical facts, well, that's a different matter. Truth does not depend on the opinions of others, nor does it depend on nebulous sources like mainstream media. But one thing is for sure: seek truth, and you will find it. It recently occurred to me that if I'm searching for truth, I need to know what it looks like when I find it. Now, everybody has their personal opinions, and some are quite quick to tell me what they think about something. And while I respect that, it's just their opinion. I mean, we've all heard things like, you must be in love, or you need a vacation, or that guy over there is the most disgusting guy I've ever seen in my life. They're all opinions. While they may seem true, love turned out to be lust. That vacation didn't turn out the way you thought it would. And that guy you thought was disgusting is seen as a gentleman by many. We find much about truth in the Bible. The book of John, chapter 8, verse 32 tells us, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." And then we look at John, the 14th chapter, the 6th verse, I believe it is, when Jesus Christ said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Now, I've already mentioned you may or may not believe in the Bible. That's a personal choice. There are even some so-called Christians that say that parts of the Bible are unreliable. And many today are confused, just as Pontius Pilate was when he asked Jesus Christ, "What is truth?" Thus far in our search for truth, we have talked about other people's personal opinions. We've talked about Bible scriptures. Perhaps we should take a little more scientific approach. Come on inside. We'll look at it from that angle. We are told that there are self-evident laws of logic called first principles. And these are founded on simple realities, most of which we seldom give a second thought. And we don't learn them, we just know them. An example: are you breathing right now? Is that true? Within these first principles are the law of non-contradiction and the law of excluded middle. And let's talk about the first one. In its simplest form, the law of non-contradiction says that the opposite of true is false, and vice versa. Some examples. Skeptics say that truth cannot be known, but then they say that their view is true. Another one, the Bible. It claims that Jesus is the only way to be assured of eternal life, while others claim there are various ways. One more. Christians say that Jesus Christ was crucified and rose from the dead, but radical Islamists will try to kill you for saying that. The point is, you can't have it both ways within the law of contradiction. One thing is true, but both cannot be true. Now, the excluded middle law tells us that something is or is not. A few examples. I get wet if I stand in the rain or not. I am thrilled at this broadcast or not. Jesus is the only begotten Son of Father God or not. These major first principles serve as a launching pad for discussing all other truths. However, while they help us discover truth, they alone cannot tell us whether or not a particular statement is true. Now, you may be a little weary by now of this scientific jargon, but hang with me for just another minute and then we'll get to the really good stuff. We all draw conclusions, that is, accepting something is true, based on observations, and this process is called induction. We believe in gravity, for example, because every time we have dropped something on our kitchen floor, we end up having to clean up the mess. Oh man! Every time we drop something, there is a remote possibility with a long string of zeros following the decimal point that gravity is not true. But excuse me while I clean up this mess before my wife comes in here. Okay, now that we understand the induction, let's talk about deduction. Deduction is what a jury does during a criminal trial. A conclusion is reached based on reasonable doubt, but too often with limited evidence. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. We have all heard of an innocent person being treated poorly. It should be of a little surprise then that most of our perceptions of truth lean toward induction rather than deduction. Okay, now take a deep breath and relax. You made it through the scientific stuff. However, we just can't stop here. We need to consider why real truth is so important in our daily lives as well as our eternity. Let's consider when someone is untrue to you. Have you ever been lied to? Your neighbor, your doctor, employer, your politicians? At the time of this broadcast, most of us would like to know the real truth about our recent political elections. And yes, we sure would like to know the truth about COVID-19 virus. But then there are so many in our society that don't want to hear the truth about morality, religion, Jesus Christ. And although few would admit it, this ignorance and apathy is because of not wanting to be held accountable to moral standards. They demand truth from others regarding how it affects their daily lives, yet avoid truth about what happens afterwards. It's paradoxical. People are led by so-called intellectuals who tell them things like, truth does not exist, everything is relative, and there are no absolutes, and it's all a matter of opinions. We are not supposed to judge others, and religion is all about faith with no facts. The list goes on, and all of these are self-defeating notions about truth. They are proclaimed through ignorance, apathy, and even downright lies. And never forget, Satan is the father of lies. It's all part of his strategy. Kill the concept of truth. It started in the Garden of Eden, and he continues with it to this very day. He has nothing else to rely on but lies and deceit. St. Augustine was right when he said, "We love the truth when it enlightens us, but we hate it when it convicts us." The truth about truth is that false ideas about it leads to false ideas about life. Untruths often lead the ill-informed persons toward justification for his or her immoral behavior while blaming it on someone else. And when enough individuals travel in this direction, we end up with a schizophrenic society. It has happened throughout history with some of the most powerful nations on this earth, and we are seeing history repeat itself. However, there are ways to combat this nonsense. When a so-called intellectual says, "There is no truth," you say, "Is that true?" When you hear them say, "All truth is relative," you ask, "Is that a relative truth?" And when you hear them say, "You can't know the truth," you ask, "Then how do you know?" Let's unwrap all this and see why truth is so important regarding morality, religion, and Jesus Christ. But once again, can you handle the truth? Without truth regarding morality, society becomes a jungle with wild animals. And if there is no truth about religion, a void becomes open for immorality. If there is no truth, what happens after we die, that is salvation through Jesus Christ, then what is the significance of life anyway? There can be no argument that nearly all human beings intuitively have a sense that they ought to do good and avoid evil. Somehow we know the difference. We know what is moral and what is not. There can be no reason for this except a moral law exists, a law that has been written in our minds and in our hearts. This moral law, this intuitive feeling, it comes with us when we are born. It's in every 2-year-old, every teenager, every full-grown adult. We don't use reasoning to discover it, we just know it. Some refer to this as consciousness, others call it the natural law, but regardless of what you call it, this moral law was given to us by a source. Let's now address the issue of truth about religion. Religions are, for the most part, derived from their proclaimed deity. For Christianity, for instance, it's the triune God. For Islam, it's Allah. And for Hindus, it's, a mixture. The point is that all religions are not the same. Despite secular dogma that we are supposed to be tolerant of all religions because they all profess truth, this pluralistic approach is more often than not intolerant in itself. The pluralist insists that everyone who disagrees with them must see things their way. So, are we not to make judgments about things that affect our life here on earth as well as what happens afterwards? Should we not judge where to live, what type of music, food, clothes? Should we not judge whether our family should live beside a convicted rapist or convicted pedophile? Let's be truthful about truth. The Bible commands us to question religious beliefs. See Deuteronomy 13th chapter, verse 1 through 5. 1 John 4th chapter, verse 1. Galatians 1st chapter, verse 8. 2 Corinthians 11th chapter, 13th verse. And go on. The Bible also cautions us, however, to be cautious when judging. See Matthew 7th chapter, verses 1 through 5. Now look at the Quran that tells Islamist believers to kill non-believers. So the issue is not whether we should make judgments, but whether or not we should make the right judgments. Let's summarize what you have heard thus far. Truth is absolute and knowable, despite how secular culture tries to convince us otherwise. Truth is by no means solely dependent on our feelings or preferences. And when something is true, it is true whether we like it or not. And contrary to a growing popular opinion, major world religions and even branches of those religions do not teach the same thing. Realizing that all religions cannot be true because they teach opposites, we must resist the pluralistic new definition of tolerance. We must not accept the impossible notion that all religious beliefs are true. Such messages can lead us into the abyss of confusion and unrighteousness. Indeed, true love requires helping others to understand real truth. So here is a personal invitation for you to view the other videos in this series entitled, Jesus? Really? You will learn of many scientific, archaeological, and ancient documents that verify the authenticity of the Bible. You will discover that Jesus Christ is one of the most mentioned lives in ancient history. Jesus is referenced by non-Christian historians, government officials, and multiple others that are not even mentioned in the Bible. And as always, you will be encouraged to research and analyze this information and then decide for yourself about truth. Now, be sure and touch the subscribe button below so you won't miss any of these future broadcasts. Also, touch on the like button below to let others know what you thought of today's presentation. This is Wayne Ammons, helping you find truth, and I hope you will discover it for yourself. God bless.